All right, it's 5 o'clock, and this is the City Council work session for Minnetrista for August 16th. And present are Chief Falls, City Administrator Mike Baroni, Finance Director Brian Grimm, Community Development Director David Abel, myself, Lisa Whalen, Mayor, and council members Pam Mortensen, John Chumperland, and McGregor, Kathleen Refkin, and also Gary Peters with Public Works and Director of Administration, Ali Palfos. So with that, we can go. First item on our agenda is budget discussion, then we're going to talk broadband, and then briefly riparian viewshed ordinance. Brian, you're on.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council, and I'll reference a lot of the material in your packet. I really don't have a PowerPoint or slideshow for this evening, and I thought hopefully it was an okay PowerPoint the other day, or hopefully informative as well as helpful. So it's more just going to be referencing the packet. Similar documents were submitted from last time. You'll see the general fund summary, the revenue detail, expenditure detail for the general fund, the CIP plan, the levy option, and then a couple other items that were added from last time. Due to what came from the discussion was a projected fund balance sheet for the road maintenance fund, and maybe we will spend some time going over that in a little bit here. You'll see that, I guess what I got out of it is once you add in the projected special assessment revenue, hopefully we'll be sitting okay to do some of the overlays that, type projects that you see that Gary Peters attached a sheet as far as what recommended projects he would have. So, I think we'll probably jump to that pretty quick here. And then based on some of the different updates, just a updated tax impact sheet. But I think as we talked about last time, with the projected levy being about at just shy of the 4.5%, but with our growth being 3.33, that 3.5% range. I mean, most properties will see a real inflationary or incremental adjustment. Whether it's based on if they have the average valuation increase of that 4 to 5%, what we're seeing from the county's numbers. So, I think it's pretty reasonable, and it does funds what the city is, priorities, roads and public safety and all that kind of all that important services. But also, I think most property tax payers would be fine with that from my perspective. So, a couple different things in the general fund. I'm sort of just highlighting the memo here. Is that there was a few changes made based on the discussion last time. We looked a little closer at the Parks Department, moved some things around, and looked at even some of the 3 to 5 year trend. Made some adjustments there, as well as the snow ice budget when we looked at more of a longer trend as far as what we needed to budget there. It seems like obviously it ebbs and flows, that type of service. Some years are really snowy, some years aren't. But so there was some adjustments there, and then in conjunction with some of the utility funds, enterprise funds we'll be talking about in fall here, October. So there was those adjustments. The other one that the next one there was we got the updated numbers between the meetings on the St. Bonifacius Fire Department, and I think two driving factors. One, their budget is going up an okay amount. I think 7.5% based on adding a duty crew officer. I think is the main factor there. Or Mike, is that? Yep.
Well, that's going to be one of them.
Or one of the main factors, I guess, or a main factor. And then as well as just our growth and our market value, as well as the fire calls. So all those percentages, when you add into the formula, the number is about a 12% increase from last year. So that's been incorporated into the budget numbers. Still don't have any updated numbers on fiscal disparities from the county, so that's just an estimate there.
Brian, is that something that the county determines? I mean, don't they get money from the state?
Well, it's more of a state program that they administer, because it's from the metro county. So I think what they said is they're waiting on some census numbers, because I think the census numbers have been delayed. So that's where usually we'd have some of that. We would have that information usually by mid-August, but I think they're hoping by end of August, early September. So, so I've made my best estimate there. And I thought it pretty conservative based on the prior year trends.
Okay.
Otherwise, I don't know. I mean, I think I might just jump into more of the newer information, which was the roads sheet, which I think was on page 22.
23?
Is that- or
23?
23, yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, pages 23 and 24 is the additional information that came out of last meeting. So, and we've had iterations of this before in front of the council just to try to project out the fund balance in previous years. So you can see there the fund balance as of basically early August is around $1.5 million. But that's before. Then I've got the next several line items are taking out pretty much the 2021 local project, overlay projects.
Question though, the Highland Road P&I, isn't that taken, don't we take that out of our MSA funds?
But they all ultimately end up in this road maintenance
Okay,
fund.
so we get that money from MSA to pay for that P&I, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
So that's it's calculated in and then it's calculated out. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. So, yeah, so you'll see basically all our 2021 projects in there, the Loring, Hardscrabble, Minneapolis. There's a small local portion of the MSA project for doing some of the, Morning View and Loring and those, not Loring, Morning View and, what's the other one, Gary? I'm missing, isn't there a couple local portions to the out by Sunnyfield?
Yeah. Morning View and,
Morning View Terrace.
yeah.
Okay, yep.
Yeah.
Well, that's on approval for tonight. Yeah.
Yep. So there's some of those items factored in, and then we have our second half tax revenue amount. That's basically half of the $725,000, the $362,500. And then I guess what I did for that item that's got the asterisk by it for 2021 is we have about $980,000 of assessments that were levied for the Loring, Hardscrabble, Minneapolis, Stonebridge. Not all of that goes back into the road fund, but about 75-80%.
Okay.
So I tried to use an estimate based on, I think we've talked that 30-ish% or so prepay, and whether that'll hold up or not on this project. So I used a conservative number, about $200,000. We'll know, I guess, in November. We'll know who's
Right,
paid by
we'll
the
know,
deadline.
right.
So when you add that back in, I think we'll be around $350,000 at year end for fund balance.
Mm-hmm.
And then just extrapolating out for 2022, then taking the beginning number, using a 2022 roads levy per our preliminary numbers of $825,000, and then we have the feasibility report for the Jennings Cove project, in the packet for tonight. That the road portion of that's about $638,000, and then using some of those other, miscellaneous, crackfield type projects. The assessment number, the $74,000, that's going to go up a lot from 2022 to 2021 based on, obviously the school will have their assessment they'll start paying on in 2022, as well as the people that don't prepay on Loring, et cetera. So that's why you can see that number is a lot higher.
So I have a question on that. So if we assess for an MSA project, do we have to use those assessment dollars on other MSA roads? Do you know?
I don't. That's a good question. I mean, yes, we've never really. Trying to think what we've really had for that situation. I mean, I think we've usually just put it back into the roads fund.
I know, I'm just
but I see what you're
asking.
saying
I
as
think
far
we've
as
had this discussion before. It sounds familiar anyway.
Yeah.
I think,
I think we
you
should-
weren't tracking. You were just putting it back into the road. I
Yeah.
don't think there's a state requirement.
Okay, that's what I was
I
wondering,
don't
if there's a
believe so
state requirement.
either, as far as needing to almost put a sub bucket
Yeah.
within this fund, as far
I'm
as
fine.
MSA and MSA
Yeah.
out or whatever. So, but yeah, those,
Okay.
as far as I know, can go back in and help for
Okay.
other projects, whether it's overlays or
Yeah,
road
okay.
road eligible projects. And then the last line item is similar again. I guess if there's, I think the Jennings project had about $330,000 in assessments right now per the
Yeah.
roughly
338, yeah.
Yep. So again, taking a percentage of prepaids, and thinking 80,000. Just obviously, we'll see when they come in.
Right.
But so I think the main theme I'm trying to get across is I think last time we talked about, do we need to levy more money for roads or do we need to transfer more from the general fund? I think when you look at the assessments here, I think we've talked about what's the right amount, and obviously that's the council's decision how much to try to budget for overlays for for 2022, and I guess that
Right.
ties into probably the next sheet on page 24 is, Gary's put together the list as far as some of the mill and overlay, candidates by priorities. So I don't know if this is the time to talk about that, or if anyone has maybe more questions on that.
Let's see if there's more questions on everything up to this point.
Okay, that's
Because
fine.
I want to make sure we don't lose
Just-
stuff in the shuffle if there's other questions.
Okay.
So, any other questions? I just had one comment, but go ahead, John.
Well, I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it just so it's out there. So in 2021 balance, we don't show the total project on Sunnyfield Road because a lot of that is MSA. But we still pay the bills, and then we file with the state and we get the money back. So there's a float. So I know if you're just going from today to the end of the year, at the end of the year, the money's back. But is there any possibility that there's a float issue with the payments for hard scrabble and all of those to the contractors before we get our money back from Sunnyfield?
I don't believe so. 'Cause I just emailed Allison and Adam this afternoon to check, because the way I remember on previous projects is once we have an approved contract, we should be able to get like 90-95% of the dollars in pretty quickly. So, and I haven't seen that come in yet. And ultimately, like you said, by year end, as long as the project's done and we've gotten
Right.
all the money and it's gonna balance out. But as far as the cash flow, I was thinking the same thing you were. Or as far as it should be coming in relatively soon, is the way I understand the MSA project. But I've followed up with the engineers. as
I'm
far as-
sure the MSA too, that they understand that you need the money to pay, and so if it's not up front, at least I'm pretty sure it's like if you have so much done, you have 50% done or whatever it is, you put in for that and then you get that. I don't know.
Well, Allison, I think we had asked
Yeah.
probably a few months ago
Yeah.
about that, and she didn't really have a timetable on how quickly they responded. But I also wondered with the issue with workforce issues right now and how things turn around in the government, if that's been delayed somewhat as well.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to see where the status of. I assume they've made the request for us, and if they haven't, we'll get that. Yeah.
During the
processed or
regular meeting, I
submitted.
asked Allison to give us an update on our roads. So
Okay.
remember to ask that question,
Okay.
because that would be, I think, tie in with that.
But no, good question. As far as I
Yeah.
pretty much left out the Sunnyfield activity, the MSA, for knowing that it was pretty much going to be a wash, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever.
So I just have another question. So on page 20, this isn't pertaining to roads, so just going back to page 20, we have in there $20,000 for technology improvements. And I'm just wondering if we can, and I was saying this to Mike earlier, can we use our ARP funds for this? And then, so that would be the first question. And then the next question, in 23, we have technology projects, and it says 31,800. Again, could we move that into 22 and get some of the technology stuff taken care of sooner than later and use our ARP funding for that?
Mayor and Council, I think we can certainly look into that. I mean, when Ally and I met with Loeffler, what's it been, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, somewhere in there, we went through our list of projects, and we were prioritizing, obviously, stuff for this year, and the first one you saw was the Wi-Fi thing that was about $9,000 that came through, but this is some additional, the one in 23 is a definitive project. Off the top of my head, I don't know if you can remember off the top of your head what it was, but
I can pull up mine.
yeah, we could just at least tell us what it is. I think it has to do with, well, it does say switches, but it basically has to do with, switches is not like an on-off switch, but it's basically an interface with, between this building and we're fiber connection to the Public Works building, and one of the things we're going to do is split up a few things for some better coverage and redundancy and things of that. And it's something they've been telling us to do for a little while, and we've been kind of pushing it off because we could and weren't under any crunch. But I think we just know that 23 is kind of the drop dead date, but we certainly could make it a 22 project. But I think the issue is, just like a lot of our projects with Loeffler, it's a supply chain thing, as we're hearing over and over on things like that. So we could certainly ask them, but even if we wanted to do it this year, we may not. It just may
In
not
22?
happen. Yeah,
but
so
if
I mean,
we
we could
budget
certainly ask
for it,
about it.
maybe
Yeah,
that might be a better route to go. And then if they don't get to it, okay, but at least
yeah. The
we've
Wi-Fi
got that
things.
money from the ARP that we can earmark towards
Yep,
it.
the Wi-Fi
Were you
thing.
looking for the cost or the day or the year that we should do it?
Not really discussing the cost, but when to do it.
They actually don't even give a date. It just says as a priority 3, which typically we've been putting those in 2023.
Yeah, which is why we did it. So we could certainly ask them about what's the feasibility of it actually, if we wanted to move it to 22, of it actually happening. Like I said with the Wi-Fi, I mean, they're telling us December, January already.
Right.
And I had that on the council agenda in July, so, 6 months.
For clarification, you're talking the most recently received ARPA funds,
Right.
not anything like in the CARES money that we
No,
get.
no, the ARP funding, because
It is technology.
that's a little more definite, I mean, very more narrowly defined what we can use it for, broadband and then infrastructure. So if this, falls into that broadband technology category, maybe we could use it for that versus.
Yeah, we can certainly check on the feasibility of that actually
Right.
being something that qualifies.
Because then we can take that 20,000 out of our, I don't know if it's levied or CIP or whatever. I mean, it'll just be subsidized with the ARP funds.
So it's
That's-
20 in 2022, 20,000 in 2022.
And then it's 31 and
And then
8 in the.
51.8 in
Right.
total.
So it'd be total.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
And the switches that you're talking about is about 25,000.
Yeah, and I think there was something else too. That
Okay.
was small amounts, but I forget.
I mean,
what
is
it was.
that something
We could
the
certainly
council
look
is?
into it.
Okay. So we'll check on that. And,
Yeah, I'll make a note.
Okay, that's all I had.
I mean, it makes sense. If we can take it out of the non-general fund, we'll try.
Right. Okay. So roads? Back
Yeah,
to
no,
I
roads.
just had a real quick
Oh.
question. We had talked briefly about doing the gun range and looking into possibly doing it next year. At what point do we add that into our budget?
Good question. I know with Chief Falls, we have it teed up to bring back to the council in September. It'll probably mean that we'll have to reconnect with the Crime Prevention Fund folks. My guess is it would probably wouldn't be a project till we start till next year. But as some of the council members know, not all of them, since you weren't here the last time we talked about this, a couple of you, that was something that they said they would fundraise for. So I think our cost, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but I think our cost will be more near the end of the project potentially, when we're trying to get it up and running and we would need money to staff it and things, kind of the ongoing costs. I have no idea how long these take to construct, but I would think they could get a gun range done within the calendar year. But so, I mean, it's a good question. I just don't know if we've fleshed it out yet.
I think it
So-
would be more of a 2023 operational
Yes.
and beyond. I mean,
Yeah.
I think there might be some small costs late in 22 if it's more the capital project is done
That's what
through
I'm
the,
thinking. If
the
they- if
crime
they're able
fund
to-
and the fundraising.
Yeah, if they're able to help us fundraise, I think that construction capital, as Brian mentioned, is probably a 22 thing, and then getting it going, it'd be a 23.
Would be
thing.
budgeted.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's something we're looking at in September? to talk
Yeah, we want to
about.
have them here. It's in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if it's on the workshop agenda or persons to be heard or something, or
Special
special presentations.
Because is there a group of people that are working on, will be working on this fundraising drive, or
Go ahead,
is
Paul.
it like the crime prevention? Okay.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, it's been some time, over a year, since we've even had this discussion at all in any way, shape, or form with the crime prevention people. So we'd have to restart that conversation to see, first of all, if they're still interested. I would assume they are. None of the members have changed since we had that discussion. It's probably been a couple of years now
Yeah.
since we started that.
Yeah.
So I would assume they would be interested, and now that hopefully if COVID doesn't get a lot worse, the fundraising climate would improve, so we could get that started. But currently, we're not having that discussion, so we were kind of waiting to see what the council wanted to do.
I think the one thing that they were asking of us back a few years ago was to make sure that the council was committed to doing this before they would entertain any thoughts of starting fundraising. I mean, they would like some assurances that this is something that they should be doing. I think that's, I don't know if you remember that as well, but
Yes, absolutely.
they don't want
That's
to
what-
start fundraising, and then you guys go, I don't know if we want to do it.
Right,
You know, so
right.
that's kind of what their template was for
Is that what happened
success.
before?
What's that?
Is that what happened before?
No, it didn't happen before. We just had preliminary talks with them, but that's the one thing they did say, that they wanted to have a commitment.
Right, and the hang-up, what killed this topic was the fact that at the time, the council was not interested in spending any taxpayer dollars whatsoever. And so the idea was for the crime fund to fundraise the money to build the capital part of it, but obviously there would be some ongoing
Right.
costs, and those can be minimal or more depending on how much public use you're interested in, things like that. So that's something the council can have absolute control over when we get to that point. But they were kind of looking for a commitment, and since they didn't get that, it just, those conversations ended, and that's where we left it.
Right, right.
So if we're going to talk about this in September as a council, at what point do you call them to say if we're going to be on board with that? So they can start presenting to us what they're looking at for fundraising.
That's a good question. I
Were
don't
you
know.
thinking of having them here in September?
Well, I guess my thought was that we would discuss this as the city, and the council would discuss it. I can certainly reach out to them and let them know we're going to be having this discussion,
Yeah.
and get maybe a tentative, hey, we're still interested in doing this. We'll talk about the logistics of that, and maybe they can come to a future council meeting after you've had that discussion and decided which way you want to go.
All right.
But I'll get them ready and let them know we're going to have a discussion.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was thinking the same thing. Chicken and egg, like
Yeah,
what do you do
right.
first?
Okay.
So,
I think one of the things that, just me, and I'm sure others would agree, the fundraising part is a big part of the decision.
oh, for sure.
So, it kind of all goes together.
And then the other piece of that, I know I explained it to my view of this project with the two new council members, is that this is not a project that we're going to be able to totally budget for on a yearly basis with user fees, et cetera. This is going to be a new line of business that we're going to have to undertake. It's going to cost us some money each year to run a gun range, and just that's the bottom line. Now, we obviously will shoot for as many ways as possible to, no pun intended, to make this as minimal cost on a yearly basis. But, there are other things that we've done here where we've taken on board. A perfect example is the building inspections. We used to farm that out. Now we have it internal. I think maybe it costs us a little more to do compared to buying a contract, but we get more of the revenue, and it's
I
been
think
a
it actually
real
costs us less.
Oh, yeah.
It costs us a lot less.
Even if it did cost us more, I still think it's been a win because of the better.
I'm looking at David.
It's a lot less.
Okay. Well, my example was we're getting better customer service to our residents, and that was the most important reason why we did it. Obviously, we've been saving some money. So, but it's a new business line. I mean, we have 2 employees that we never had a few years ago. So, I mean, yeah, we're growing the corporation, so to speak. But this may be the same case. But I think it might be a win for the PD.
Right.
So,
Well, and the good news is our Gillespie donation has been stopped after this year. So there is some money there maybe to put towards this effort,
right.
So-
Well, that's part of the 22 budget.
Right.
Right,
I mean, it's already
Right.
gone at 22.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
Anyway, okay.
okay. All right. Any other comments or questions?
Okay, for the overlays, for that sheet, it adds up to $559,000. So with the money that you're talking about, the 600 and some $1,000, we basically will have enough money to cover all that?
Gary?
Well, some of these are done on that sheet already. So
No, I already checked them off, and I didn't add them into the
And
whole
then
thing.
just kind of talking with Adam today, and Randy and I were actually looking at a few other areas. This list is going to change from what we have. I know we want to kind of do these patch type overlays, but looking at what we have out in Hunter's Crest going on right now, we're actually going to add some more to this list for next year for you once it gets decided. But we're looking at like Games Drive, Landings Drive. I mean, these are all pushing what, David, 20 plus years they've been there now for phase one. I mean, we've already done Pheasant Cross. We've already done Hunter's Court. We've done Glacier Court. Just looking out there, Games Drive, Landings Drive, and then the east side of Hunters on Gander Lane, and then Glacier Road east of Hunters would be the only other ones we have. But the main, I don't know if you've driven out there, but the main line of Hunters is just falling apart. It's going to be, I think, unfortunately, it's going to become a reclaim, because if we don't do it, I mean, this year, I mean, I almost think it's going to be too far gone for a mill and overlay, but we need to get the side streets done first before you can even think about doing main line. So that's why we're kind of talking about that with Adam too, and when he next time we get together with him, we're going to drive through there and take a look. But there's stuff that we would like to present a little differently here, looking at this being if we're going to do some real mill and overlays. I mean, we're only talking from a 1 inch to a 2 inch mill and overlay on these roads, but we got to save these neighborhoods. They're going to be gone otherwise, and we're going to be doing a lot more reclaim than we have to. So
Well, all of the problem is when you look at all this list, Sunny Highland Road, Morning View Terrace. Well, that's going to be done now. Squire Lane, Chateau. Those are all very low density, and so if you have to go in and you have to do a total reconstruct, it gets super expensive. So that's one of the things I want to make sure is that we can get some of these areas that are low density, at least put them out a ways, because, I mean, when you're talking having to reconstruct these roads, you're
Yep.
looking at some of these being somewhere in the vicinity of $15,000 assessments.
And Preserve and Bertram and both the Squire and Chateau, we
Right.
did go in, I believe it was last year and the year before, and we went through and did a lot of milling and of the wide cracks. I mean, some of the cracks were 2.5 inches wide going across the road. So we went in and milled down 2.5 inches ourselves with our equipment, and we filled everything in so it will survive once we get these crack fills. So I mean, that we're pretty confident they can survive it. Once we get the new numbers too, it'll really tell us the big picture. But if you look at, I understand where you're coming from, but if you look at the big picture where you have Hunters that's 20 years old, the only difference in these roads, there's no water, no sewer, nothing like that.
Right.
So when they're put in, everything's based, nothing's moved. Where these other neighborhoods, you've got so much settlement and moving, everything, so you got 20 plus years of settlement that's taking place. So, I mean, it's something to think about and look at too. I mean, it's getting to be really bad in there. The reason I bring it up is I had a lady call. She does daycare. She's got one spot in front of her driveway that's just, the curb line's all broke up. She has water pooling, the road shots. That's why we started looking at that. And yeah, there's curb panels that need to be done in there. We can do that in-house and save the city that way. But yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where you got to pick your battles, and I think our battle will be more justified out there right now. Keep an eye on this for maybe 2023. We look at doing just a slight mill and overlay out there. I mean, there's not a lot.
So are
of
you saying in
driveways,
Hunter's Crest you're talking about mill and overlay?
mill and overlay on the side streets.
On the
yes,
side streets.
to try to save them. Hunter's Trail is an MSA road, so we can use MSA dollars once the fund's replenished in there. But like I say, unless you're going to do it next year, we might as well wait on that, patch it up as we can, and then just wait till the side streets are done and then do a reclaim.
Okay. As of right now, we're talking budget. You're not giving me warm and fuzzies that we actually are covering what we needed to cover. So I need to know what we're really going to do. When?
Right, I guess we're looking at, and that's, I think, part of the discussion is the $825,000 that we're levying, in spite of all of the dollars that we'll have left over, is that going to be enough? And that kind of was my question too last time, is should we be levying more than the $825,000? And how much, and at what point? I mean, there's obviously a point at which you're not going to do more, but
And the conversation that I had with you about taxes and the politics of that, and I completely understand all of it. All I want to know is something definite. And what I was just told is that this isn't really even a good approximation. So, and I'm not faulting anybody, I'm just saying, in another meeting coming up, can we get something closer to what is real? That's all.
Well, I think it is real. It's just a matter of how much is the council wanting to do. And I mean, is 500,000, is $1 million, and what's feasibly both financially and logistically. And we've ran into it at the city here before, where we've taken on too many projects, and then all of a sudden none of them are being done to the full level of timeliness and stuff. So there's a balance between, I think with our plan, if you can make a good dent in it in 2022 and then have the rest ready to go in the queue for 2023. I mean, at some point, what we're trying to do here is just trying to balance there's always going to be more roads to do. I mean, this is the list Gary gave me the other day, but now if there's hunters, if there's things that need to be
But
added.
I think that's what we need to find out. What is it going to cost for the Hunter Crest roads that need to be done?
And I'd actually like to see, and you'll tell me if this is not something we do, I'd actually like to see a 2022 and a proposed 2023, so that we have some fair idea of when Gary's talking about things that really need to be done versus what can be put off. We have some real handle on it, because right now we don't, to my way of thinking.
I think I got to keep Gary in the office a little more, so every time he goes out and looks, we got another problem. So I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying that I could send him out every day for the next 2 weeks, and he could probably find a whole bunch more stuff that he'll say
stuff going
we need
on.
to do. That's my point. I mean,
Yeah, but I
at
think Gary's a
certain
good
point,
judge of what really needs
you still have
to
to
be done.
prioritize what you got. So.
I hear that, but
Yeah.
I'd like to actually see on paper, or tell me flat out that you think this is all that needs to be done in 2022, and if that's true, discussion's over for me.
I think this would be a really good start, and a lot more than what we've done in previous years. So at some point, it's like I go back to what's feasible both financially and logistically, but which is what would be great to do in a perfect Pollyanna world, I guess.
But what we're hearing, though, right now, and I think this is the confusion, we had this in our packet, and if you add it up, like Ann said, it's 500 and some odd thousand. So then you look at the balance that you presented, and we're going, we can do all that. So we can get all this done next year, including the Jennings Cove. But now we're also hearing, we really should be putting this on hold until 23 and doing the ones in Hunter's Crest. And I think we need to hear what's the price tag for the Hunter's Crest ones, because I think that we need to hear that. We need to know that. And then...
And this just came to light today. We started looking at that today, and it's like, oh my God, I mean, the side streets are getting bad there too. So, yeah, I mean, we could probably put that out till 2023, work on these, and get, and do this stuff as it's presented through here. Now, a couple of these are just going to be, the Highland Road is basically a paid return, and so is Clarence. But, the other ones are all, Pine Circle, that would leave nothing on 44, then left that hasn't been touched. Chateau Square, Preserve, Bertram. If you would do those now, and do an 1.5 inch overlay on them, you probably wouldn't have to touch them for 20 years.
See, that's what I'm thinking.
You're done up in that area, correct. The only thing I would say on Bertram is, which plays into a factor here, we do have a drainage issue there, which I know the Sarah Pioneer Watershed District was looking at a drainage issue. It's more the county's issue than our issue, but our culvert might not be correctly placed, so it's stormwater, but that's something that would be added in. But as far as everything goes, I mean, the people on Sunnybrook Circle would absolutely love it, because we get their drain tile project done, and there's a huge water issue there running down. So I mean, we could do that. So again, Painters Road, Painters Drive, Painters Creek Drive, and Painters Circle. I mean, it's all stuff that and Ridgewood Cove. I mean, you touch those. I mean, that'd be good for that would get us through. And then we worry about, and then if we want to look at what we got coming down the pipe we can put stuff into play for neighborhoods as far as 2023 goes. Start chipping away at Turtle or Hunters, or we have Painters Creek up there too, on the north end too. So I mean,
110.
We could start making a list of that. What's really going to help us when we get our updated PCI numbers. That'll help immensely. And those are coming next meeting, so.
That's at the next meeting.
Correct,
Okay.
yep. So, and actually, I'll get a sneak preview here. I'm going to try to get them this week from them and see what they got. So, so I can start looking at them and see, just what everything's coming in at. And
Okay,
but-
because what I'm trying to head off here, I know what you're trying to do, and I know what you're trying to do with not having to raise taxes. I get the whole thing. But what I'd like to know is before something erupts and we look like we're surprised, which is not a good look, I'd like to know what it is we're really facing, the actual truth of facing. So, I don't know, does Gary need to do a presentation? I mean, basically, I need to know exactly what we're looking at. Is that too much to ask?
No, and I think, so on the 20th, when you come back with the ratings, will you also have dollar amounts for that then?
we can come up with, I think they will, I mean, we can put it in and use, basically what we're doing this year for mill and overlay dollar-wise this year and, come up with a number and,
yeah,
and add
obviously.
10% or whatever, for the
So-
cost of it, so.
When you come back with the list, it should have all of these things on it, I'm assuming, plus the new ones that you've mentioned, plus any other ones that they come up with. But I think with all of them, we have to have a dollar amount, estimated dollar amount, because that will get to what I think, what Ann and I think all of us need to know where we're going with this and how we can address this. Because that's what I was saying, is 825,000 enough? What if we added, and I don't know, 50,000 isn't going to do a whole lot, but if we added an extra 50,000 this year, it's 1%, so rather than the 4.47, it's going to be 5.47. I don't know if that's something we want to do or consider.
Or you could draw that from reserves. You draw that from reserves, we're still over 50% by a small amount.
Okay, so that should then maybe be considered as well, but
Yeah, I think we need to know if the Hunter's Trail work would be 50,000 or 500,000.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, just to
I'm guessing it's
exaggerate.
gonna
I
be-
mean,
And we can, and once, when I can sit down with Adam, we can figure that all out and get you the numbers real easy. I mean, actually, I have it on, if I had a computer, I could tell you right now. I've got all that numbers punched in with my whole list on the old stuff. I have all this on there. All my data has got this all on there. One thing to remember is, which is really going to be nice, we are getting rid of our quote unquote bad patching areas. So we're not going to be spending 2 months patching in these areas, which is freeing my guys up to do more work. So we're actually looking forward to being able to take care of, for example, this fall, we're going to take care of all the catch basins in Jennings Cove. We're going to do that all in-house, along with probably about 300 feet of curb. So, I mean, we'll pay for a curb. We have to pay for a curb vendor anyways, but we're going to save that money in-house. This is the same stuff with here. So if we go like to 2023 with hunters, we can do the curb work. We
Okay.
can get the stuff arranged. We want to start being proactive instead of reactive. We're
Right.
finally to that point.
Right.
We can see the light on the horizon. It's coming. We can start being proactive, similar to what Eden Prairie, Minnetonkas do. They work a year ahead. So they're replacing curb, catch basins for the following year's project. That's what we want to do here, and we're just about there. We're excited to do it. So and my guys will be able to do it in-house, and we'll save a lot more money. So when we're talking just straight mill and overlay, we'll have some manhole work to do, but eventually we're going to do that too. But the curb work will be done, so we're going to be saving a lot of money. So I actually have a lot more money just for mill and
Okay.
overlay.
yeah.
Okay, so you and I had a talk today, and I started in on the numbers about the difference with the levy rates and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
You owe the county by September 30th.
Yes.
We have 2 more meetings.
Maybe.
Maybe. Oh. Okay, fine.
We
Well,
might,
At least one. Yeah.
we're probably going to cancel I'm going to recommend that we cancel the 7th.
Which is fine. But again, if you owe a number by September 30th, what I'd like to see match up somehow is exactly what has to be done in 2022 and exactly what you propose for 2023, even though that can wobble. And then what that does to the amount of money we have to put in with the actual levy rates and how that changes. Then we have to look at it from a political, social standpoint. Yes?
Yes.
How much do we ideally want to carry over in 2022 to 2023? Because, I mean, if we're carrying over, 350,000 this year, and these projects would cost $560,000. What's normal to carry over?
Well, we've had a lot lower level of activity, so I mean, we've been carrying over probably 100,000 or so, just based on what we have been doing, and whether that's right or wrong, or just as a little bit of a startup balance almost. So for some of these larger projects, so that's what we have been doing. Obviously, for this projection at the end of 2022, if you even carry over 100,000, that's you could spend roughly a little over 500,000, which pretty much matched up with, as Ann said, the what was in the packet here. Gary threw me a curveball or knuckleball.
I didn't mean to throw it to you.
Some baseball, the state baseball tournaments in Waconia coming up here. So it's like, so yeah, we can. I mean, obviously, I'm certainly pleasantly surprised. I've never really had a council say we want to almost do more than what staff's presented, which is
we need to. I think I agree.
good.
We have to look at the numbers, and we have to look at everything that we have to do, and then the decision is how much do we want to raise the levy by, and how will that impact our residents? So,
well, an option is to start. You can always come down. So whether
and
you
that's-
add 100,000 to
And
it,
see-
and you do 5.5 or 5.47%,
and that's what I was thinking. Rather than going really low in September, maybe we want to go the 5.5 and then work on this a little more, and then maybe we can come down.
That might be a good option.
I'd
Maybe
hate
get
to
some
be up
flexibility.
here. I'd
Yeah.
hate to be down here, and then we're going, gee, had we only done this. And I agree, we can take some out of our fund balance, but we have to keep an eye on that as well. But all of those things. But I'd rather go a little bit high and then work on it and bring it down.
So the general framework of the levy is fine, but if anything, we might look at. The council's amenable to potentially moving that up for roads. or whatever.
For now, for discussion purposes, I think.
Yeah, for the record, the numbers that I ran today and talked about, if you added 100,000, it's going to be 6.47.
Right.
Yep.
So
Yeah, correct. You do the 100,000.
that
Right.
tells you what 100,000 will do.
We could do 50 there and 50 in reserves.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
But if you start with 100,000 at 6 point whatever, we can come down.
We could
Right.
pull
We
50
could
out
Right.
and move it to
Yeah,
reserves.
and maybe, and I don't know where the 20,000 for the, is that a CIP, the 20,000 that we discussed earlier? Is that general fund dollars, or is that CIP dollars?
Talk about those IT.
Yeah.
maybe CIP. But
Because
yeah.
if that's coming out of general fund levy dollars, that gives us a few more for roads.
Well, we're transferring some money from the general fund to cover the CIP.
Okay.
We're
Okay.
doing about 225,000 to try to, not do equipment certificates and
But
use
that
those
can be
reserve funds.
down- that can
yeah,
be
they can sort of
worked
back
with.
and forth
Yeah.
or whatever. So,
Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
That's it for me.
All right.
all right. Let's see, any,
So mainly would be bring back the numbers, including what Gary talked about on Hunter's Crest. Look at a couple of different options that are probably a little higher, versus,
Right.
and then
go from there.
And obviously, yeah, we just gotta, as Ann said, certify a levy, or we all know by September 30th. So
Right.
you can always
yeah.
change it from there. I guess come down if you need
Yeah,
to. So.
all right. Yeah, and I think the tax impacts are going to be, I mean, if you look at this, the one on page 25, on a $350,000 house, if it went up 4%, is now a $2 increase. 500 went up to 525, is now an $18 annual increase, and so on. An extra 100,000 probably isn't going to go much more than $3 or $20 and $25. I mean, probably pretty minimal. But
Yeah, but you're still going to have people mad because the city's gotten a ton of money and we're going to pay more in taxes.
right. Yeah.
There's that
yeah.
perception, or
Yeah, that's
potentially
that
as far as
perception,
some of the
sure.
federal funds and
Yeah.
stuff we've got. So
Right.
Yeah.
that's the balance. I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your home value went up, so you're paying more in general in taxes more, and then the city needs to add more on top of that, even though they got,
Yeah, 'cause obviously the
$500,000.
county and school districts are going to do what they're going to do
Yeah.
independently or whatever. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll look at it.
That's
at
the hard part.
September 20th. Yeah. All right. Okay. With that, I think we'll move on to broadband then.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Hold on, let me get my document ready. So at the previous work session, the City Council was presented a counter offer to MediaCom, which was 40% of the entire project cost for the deed extension. You directed staff to send our counter proposal, and we received their response back, and that's an attachment B, basically saying thanks but no thanks. So that's where MediaCom's at. For the water tower lease agreement, you reviewed the draft by Mr. Bob Vose, and you directed us to send it to both Lakeside Networks and Extra Time. And I included my email exchange with Extra Time, and then Lakeside actually redlined. So I'll go through Extra Time's requests. We decided to strike the provision that refers to speeds. I misinterpreted. They only meant that was related to what they would offer to City Hall, and we don't need their services, so we just struck that whole provision from both agreements. They requested also economical access, which to us basically means free. Extra Time is. And staff recommends no change to the proposed lease amount. Lakeside Networks didn't seem to have a problem with the amount. Extra Time is also requesting that they are the only provider being offered access to the water tower due to frequency space. I'm not sure. I don't know much about frequency space, but we believe that's kind of for the providers to figure out, not the city's role to get involved in coordinating their service. They also requested that city pay for electricity. We discussed with legal counsel, and we find this reasonable. And then Extra Time also mentioned the city's discussion about providing funds for microcells, whether that be directly to residents or to Extra Time itself. And legal counsel really advised against it. The expenditures don't often meet the public purpose test and raised a potential accounting and auditing problem. So we recommend not providing any funds for microcells. And then Lakeside Network, their red line is also included. They're requesting an initial term of 60 months instead of I think it was 10 years or something, maybe even more. They also requested that the lease for 2021 is prorated, which we agree to, and I think if we drafted a lease agreement with Extra Time, we'd include that as well. They also requested adding some verbiage surrounding providing service to every resident, and that was included in there. And they also requested additional language to reflect uncertainty of space and capacity for the antennas. So Bob actually sent me his response on Friday before I got to put out this packet, and I think we would probably have him rework the language about their request to change the term of the lease, because it only obligates them for 5 years and still obligates us for 15 years the way they have it written. So we'd rework that. And then their obligation to make service available, it's really watered down in their revised language. So I think we would advise Bob to beef that back up a little bit or keep it as it was.
So why do we care whether they offer to
Well, I think what their red line is saying is we don't really have to offer anything. And we want to say, well, you have to offer something. And I think we can find some middle ground between being completely watered down so they get access and don't provide service to anybody their language would allow. And
I see. Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying?
If they're on the tower, we want them to provide
service,
something. Okay.
Something.
Okay.
Ours may have been a little too much.
Right. We were saying to everyone. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And there was saying to nobody. So I think we can maybe find a middle ground. I'm not sure. But like I said, Bob sent me these on Friday after I sent the packet out. So I'd probably have him come back with some language that he thought was appropriate. So those were the lease agreements. And then the letter to the state and county representatives.
Let's talk about the lease agreements real quick.
Sure.
First, before we move on.
Yeah.
So a couple things. Electricity is normal that we pay anyway. Here's a suggestion. If it kind of as an incentive to try and get them on as quick as possible, if we pay, so there's other installation costs. I think you said Badger. So anyhow, if we paid
some sort of inspection done.
There's an inspection. So if we paid for the inspection, we pay for the electricity ongoing. And how about we give them no charge for the remainder of this year? Okay. If they get their antennas and whatnot installed, that's kind of the incentive for them to get going, because that's what we want. We want
For both providers, for all 3 water towers?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a little, just a thought. We're only looking at 4 more months max if they got it up by the end of the month. You know, we're only talking 4 months. Just a thought.
Okay, yeah, I like your thought.
Okay.
We're primarily interested in those 300 people.
Yes.
And
Well,
I know.
yes and no.
We'd like better reliability in the whole bit for everybody, but those 300 people.
Unserved, yeah.
Okay. Are all 3 water towers necessary for those 300 people?
No.
No.
No, I don't think so.
But they are, so one water tower couldn't provide all 3, but you might need all 3 in order to provide
Dude.
some of those 300.
Correct, because the 300 span really kind of around the border
Because like
of
the
our
one,
city.
the South Water Tower, the new one that's going up, that could potentially hit maybe this area over here.
Well, and that'll hit more than the Kings Point one just because of how high it'll be on the ground versus the Kings Point one. So they might not
Right.
even care about the Kings Point one once the new one's up because of the height of them.
Right.
Right.
Because like when I drive home, I can see the St. Bonnie water tower, but when I'm St. Bonnie, I can't see our water tower.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
but they may need all 3 in order to give more coverage to the 300.
Okay. They are businesses, and they're going to want to do what works for them. But if we can somehow hone in on something they could do between now and the end of the year for those 300 people, any of the 300 people,
Right.
we're ahead of the game.
Right.
So when we come back to them, we may want to actually get down to specifics along those lines of the 300 people.
See, we've brought that up to Mr. Vose, and that's really for the business itself to decide, because we're not in any sort of franchise agreement with
But
them
if we
like
don't
we are
bring it
Minecom.
up, they're not going to be thinking that way.
I can definitely, we can contact Mr. Vose and see, again, if we can, but, you know, do we put in addresses? Do we?
Well, is there like
do
a
a
way
service
we know
area?
where we need to put a microcell to expand service to them? Like, you know, could the city just put up a couple microcells where they need to be to hit that area so the residents won't have to pay for it? And then we're not funding the business. We're just saying, we're going to buy microcells and put them in these 3 locations so you can hit this area.
She's right. And basically, if we hone in on what has to be done to get those 300 people what they need by the end of December, then we have done our job for at least for this year. Whether Mediacom's going to play with us or not, at least the other 2, we will have brought in competition, which is the idea. And then that gives us a chance to see what that competition can do. And for the record, do we know who took Greenfield, the city? Do we know if it was Lakeside or whether it was Extra Time?
No, it was neither one.
I was going to say, I know Extra Times and Independence. I have no idea who's in Greenfield. I want to, actually, it's
It's not Comcast either.
Net
Was it CenturyLink?
No, it's the old Jaguar. Whatever Jaguar.
MetroNet.
Yeah.
I think it's
Whatever
yes.
that is.
I think it's MetroNet.
Yeah.
I think so.
Or the new Jaguar.
Because
or
it was,
whatever.
I mean, that was a give. I mean, basically, when Mediacom told us that they are aware of competition and not happy that they lost Greenfield,
Right.
it would be so nice if we could bring that competitor in here.
Because when I first presented these to you guys and presented it to Bob, what you guys wanted, which included language about microcells and serving, he recommended not including that in a water tower lease agreement. The water tower lease agreement is to determine the terms. It's not who you're providing and how much you're providing. We could add that. It's just not. He said it wasn't really customary.
Well, I don't think you put it in the lease agreement. I think you just go to the provider and say, we want to buy 3 microcells and put them in these locations. How do we do that?
Once they're
Once they're on the water
once
tower,
they're on the
it's
water
leased in
tower.
that.
Yeah.
Once they're on the water tower.
Right. Yeah.
And then
Not make
they
it
would-
part of the
Yeah,
agreement.
it would just be in city property somehow in that area.
So we'd
Or-
almost become a customer
Yeah,
of their service.
yeah.
Yeah.
The owner of the 3 microcells.
I'm
know.
gonna probably go with Bob Vose on this one. So here's what I translate that as meaning. So if we, let's say, to use your example, buy 3 microcells and we put them in, and if it's Extra Time, it's going to be in somebody's backyard, so it's not going to be on city property because that's the way they operate. basically we're buying the internet service for a finite group of residents, and we haven't done that before. And I think that's what Bob was trying to tell us. He says, you don't want to be in the business of buying internet service for residents. That's their job. They can contract with Lakeside. They can contract with Extra Time.
But they'd still have to pay for the services. We would
Sure.
just be allowing the sell.
That's part of the service. I mean, that's what people have done. They've banded together 10, 12, 15 homes, whatever the
build it.
number. You all go in. You
But
need a
how's it different
microcell.
than paying MediaCom to put wire in?
Well, it's generally done in the right of way, so it's a little bit of a difference for at least for that particular thing.
It's still money invested in
Yeah, but
something.
I mean, there's a distinction. I'm not doing a very good job of explaining it, but I think the point is that we are subsidizing some people's internet service, and we haven't done that. I mean, I know of people that have, I don't know, I think I was talking with Pam today. One of our former council members just got Extra Time. He paid for it. I mean, why should we pay for it?
And then how do you backtrack?
Yeah.
You know, if people who they're going to be.
But you
mad
could
if
do,
they already-
but
If it goes bad, they got to call
you could
us.
do something like what Kathleen is, and then you would lease it to the providers. So we're not providing it for free of charge, but then you would lease it back. They could lease it from you.
Well, we can bring that up with Mr. Vos and see
mean-
if some sort of lease agreement where we're not really buying something for somebody. I feel like we're giving these two companies an opportunity to be on the water towers, which is what they need to do
Right.
to sell their business product and products to customers. If they can go out and hoof it and talk to people and say, we're on the tower. If you put a thing in your backyard, you and your 12 neighbors can all get internet.
We'd be
Here's your-
basically running their
here's your
business
price.
for them.
Yeah.
Getting them customers and, installing microcells.
I don't think that's our job. Is kind of my point. So.
And that was Mr. Vose's opinion as well. But
I think the first step is to get them on the tower.
Yeah,
Right.
That's what,
You know?
that's what we can
And
work on.
And I
Yes.
think, and I think the lease
I think that's step
agreement.
one.
Yeah, and so that's why I was saying, give them an incentive to get up there this year. It won't cost them anything to get it up, and this year anyway.
does the council, you want me to present that to both providers for all three water towers?
Yes, we do.
I think so. I think that's.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with that.
Do we know for a fact that their statement, Extra Time statement about the frequency,
I know, and I even asked Bob
Now
about
they're
that,
on-
and he said he doesn't see an issue, but I'm not sure if they're just trying to monopolize here and take
now
it
they
over.
supposedly are on towers at Dassel, Holdingforth, and Uppsala. I wonder, are they the
I bet
only
they're
one
the
on
only
the tower?
ones. Yeah. I'm just wondering, have they never been on a tower with another provider and have no experience in it, or are they trying to?
Pardon me, but when they were here to present, I thought they both said that they figured that out, that
That-
they got
Yeah.
on different frequencies.
I thought they said they could
both-
work together.
Wasn't that a call? That was a call.
Yeah,
back
that was a
we were-
Zoom call.
Yep. They
I mean,
initially said no
virtually.
problem,
Right.
and then came back and said problem. So I don't know.
yeah.
I
Extra
think it's
time.
just more work for them.
It could be, and finding different frequencies and
But they didn't
channels.
both say problem, just Extra Time
Exactly.
said
And that's
problem,
not
right?
really, again, I don't know if that's the city's role to work out that issue for them.
I would agree. But again, so if you go forth with both of them, it'll fall out one way or another anyway.
Right. And who knows? They may not have. Both companies may not want to be on all three towers.
Right.
Right.
And I bet Lakeside, I think they really only want to be on two. So that opens up the third for Extra Time if they want it. I'm not sure.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so I will present the no lease amount for 2021 and then the 5,000 for the following years.
Yeah.
Okay?
And now MediaCom.
Yeah.
So,
I don't want to say.
getting MediaCom to do phase 2. MediaCom, I hope you're listening. And trying to get MediaCom to do phase 2, what is our leverage? Do we have any?
This deed grant is probably, they're delaying until the application is due in September, and then they're going to come back and say, well, you were going to spend 89 on this project. Let's spend that on the deed broadband grant and move forward and see what happens.
But they wanted
And
us
they'll-
to spend 150.
Right. I think they'll ask for more.
Yeah.
And they're saying, and we didn't agree to that, but we thought it was reasonable when they asked us. So I don't think there's any leverage unless we do what Bob said and take the reins a little bit, but I don't see that being the best option for our residents.
You mean sue them?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Well,
What if, it'd be nice if we knew what Extra Time and
Can do.
Lakeside can do
Can do.
in the meantime,
Yeah.
because then we could say to MediaCom.
yeah.
Well, you may have that happen anyway. I mean,
Right.
If people find out that Lakeside and or Extra Time are both pretty good products, you may have more people signing up for them. So,
Especially if
that-
they're really reliable.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to invest 89 or 150,000 into MediaCom if we know that Lakeside and or Extra Time can provide that
Can
coverage.
provide.
Well, we can just do what MediaCom does and not respond.
When poked, they respond.
So when they apply for the deed grant, do we have to? So we could be supportive of the grant,
which we usually are.
which we are. But do we have to say how much dollars we would put in? Or
I think so.
Okay.
It's a point system, and I don't know what the threshold is in getting points, but I think their ask of $150,000 really improves our application points. So
And when is that due?
I want to say it's end of September, mid-October. I think that's when they sent it in last year. They handle the application. We just submit a letter of support, but I
And-
could probably look it up.
And for the city, that's not a surprise. I mean, they have a $1.5 million project, and they wanted to have us participate at $150,000, so it's 10%. And and it's the rest is not on them. Half is from the grant, and the other half is them
It'd be
and us.
$750,000.
So, yeah, so
Are there
there's
gonna be-
600,000 and we're 150.
Yeah.
Are there going to be more dollars available with the ARP funding? Because I know
think
the
it
state
stayed the
got
same.
money too.
I want to say I'd have to look.
So the state has what, 35 million or biennial, or is it per year? I know there was 60 million at one time on the table, but I think that got reduced.
So you're talking about the funds that the
For
state
deed.
has to spend?
Yeah, for
Okay,
deed.
well,
No, just for deed.
that could
Because
be-
they're funded by the state every biennium, and so I think they put in 60 million originally, but then I think it got cut back to maybe 30 million. Is that
The
right?
30 sounds right. I'm
Okay.
trying to find it
I
here.
think it's 30 million. So the state already earmarked, outside of the broadband expansion through ARP, they already earmarked or designated 30 million to deed. So what I'm saying is, do we know what additional dollars are going to be available through the state for broadband expansion? Because that's one of the big things
I'm
with
not
this ARP
sure.
dollars.
Well, I looked into the use of the ARP dollars through the state, and a lot of it is helping pay bills and
Okay.
that sort of thing, or they
Okay.
assist with buying laptops and those sorts of funding, not necessarily infrastructure like we're talking. As far as
okay.
I researched, that was a few weeks ago or whenever you emailed me about it.
Okay.
It didn't quite fit what we were looking for. We're not looking to cover people's internet bills.
Okay.
But I can look into it more.
So, with the funds, I think it was your next topic. If we're going to share with other cities, possible that they can come up with part of the money that we are supposed to come up with?
For the deed.
The deed thing?
well,
with-
MediaCom would only apply for Minnetrista, and why? No, I mean other cities wouldn't
Yeah, we're
provide
going to.
funds.
They're obviously looking at projects, but we're trying to make them look at Minnetrista projects. So that's what we're trying to do. I could care less about what any other city's doing at this point in time. I mean, I want to work with MediaCom. I want to support their grant proposal for our city.
I guess I think so the deed, we're really interested
You know.
just for us in Minnetrista. The letter we're sending is to kind of get attention for representatives to support and lobby for more funds for broadband for areas like ours. So it's kind of two separate,
Okay.
but
Okay.
could possibly.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're asking state and county, because everybody's getting ARP funds. How they spend them, we don't know, but we're going to say, here we are. We'd be happy to take some of your money. 'Cause we have a need.
Right. I think Hennepin County should give us money because how many areas in Hennepin County are unserved or underserved?
Right.
I mean,
A few, but
we're
not-
a few. I mean,
But not a lot.
we're
Not
one
a
of the
lot.
few.
Urban
Yeah.
county.
All
Because
right.
even these, going to the letter, a lot of these cities aren't in Hennepin County either.
Right.
They're-
For that, they could be on-
Does it help us if we
Carver
talk to the
or-
commissioner?
Say that again.
Does
Would
it
it-
help us if we talk to the commissioner, the one who offered his help to us?
Kevin Anderson.
We'll probably send this letter to him
Okay.
with the resolutions of support.
Okay.
So just out of curiosity, and nobody might have the answer to this, when we put in extra time in Lakeside and we let all the residents know that we're doing this and we're educating them that this is available, how many people do you think are going to drop MediaCom?
It
I think we
depends.
might get
In my
some.
neighborhood, probably quite a few.
Well, they're gonna lose a lot
It's word of
business.
mouth, so it's a lot of neighbors talking to each other, I imagine.
Yeah,
and-
I would think that's
Or just
exactly
a
it.
Facebook.
Yeah.
So MediaCom, I mean, their business is going to really suck. So,
Well, I mean, that's on them. So.
right, well, that's why, we kind of got that. We're promoting the two that are going to do things with us and let MediaCom be MediaCom.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I would use that we're promoting them. I think we're doing business with them to give them access to a tower so they can do their business. Yeah.
We're offering them an opportunity.
Yeah.
We're just giving them
This is
access,
how
just like
they-
we do AT&T
Yeah.
and T-Mobile and anyone
Yeah.
else.
Yeah,
Right.
because they're different than MediaCom by what products they're delivering. They're just these guys are just
Right. MediaCom's
giving internet.
It's a cable
It's a
franchising
cable franchise. So they're doing
agreement.
TV
Right.
and telephone. These guys aren't doing that. So.
The money we agree to help with the deed grant, can that come out of the ARP money?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or out of our cable fund.
Yeah.
One of the two.
We have, $250,000 in our cable fund.
Yeah.
So
What
it can
else
come
would
out
we
of
use that
but-
money for?
Well, I think I would say our first line should be our ARP funding, because that's very specific.
But that can go to water.
And also time frame.
But if we have the money in our cable fund that we can't use it for very much stuff for either, wouldn't it make more sense to
Yeah.
keep the ARP money aside for the water issues we are having?
We want to definitely analyze because there's going to be needs in both, obviously the water we've talked about and stuff, and then obviously there's a lot of broadband cable needs also. But to
Right.
your question, we really haven't, their main improvements with the cable fund dollars have been in the council chambers or whatever, so otherwise we haven't had a lot of other major expenditures out of the cable fund.
What else would we use it for?
I mean, otherwise, right now we
Does
just use it
anyone's
for
part of
broadcasting
anyone's
our
salary come out of there? Or no?
Yeah, we do have some, so
Yeah.
it's for promoting, the city and getting our message out. So we do
Public and education.
we charge, the monthly taping of our meetings to go to that. Some of obviously
Yeah.
Ally's time and stuff as far as communications and stuff come out of the fund. So
And eventually, like on TV with the bigger cities, or if you had your meetings live on
Right.
TV,
Yeah.
you'd
Yeah.
have
The
that-
pig fees are used for.
Yeah, it could be used for that, although I think the technology around how meetings are going to be broadcast in the future may not be directly related to cable. It could be more,
Streaming.
Live streaming.
Yeah.
Streaming.
And that would be
Right.
something we could invest in order to do that.
But we
So-
could tap into that first, or
Right.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yep.
yeah. Okay. All right. So what else do we need today? What else do you need from us today?
So
To move this.
for extra time, I will come back with our counter offer, and I'll probably put it in a red line, and then they can respond to the red line. If you're okay with the electricity and
The
what
inspection.
else? Yeah, I
Yeah.
can.
And we'll try to get a cost on that
Yeah.
inspections.
Okay.
I feel like I'm shooting in the dark a little because that's, I'm sure, a cost they haven't thought of yet. I don't know how many water towers they're on. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
unless
right.
they've done business with,
Right.
Was it
We could even
Independence
look
on
at
the-
the language in the cell provider
Yeah.
agreements and see what the inspection
It's
language
anywhere
is.
from 5 to 10,000.
Badger
Okay.
State.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
For
Wow.
for one, well, they're working on them quite a bit, and that's the inspection fees. You're in that range.
Yeah.
Is it just a one-time inspection, or do they have to keep? Like,
Anytime
yearly,
when they install them, they review the plans for engineering, and then once it gets installed, it'll get inspected to
Right.
make sure it's done right. And then they constantly, technology is constantly changing, so they're constantly upgrading them. So every time they go and do upgrades, same thing, inspections.
So we would just cover the initial
Yes.
inspection.
That would be
Yes.
what I would recommend. Yeah, not any ongoing.
You know,
They sh-
that's something I feel like, not that we're obligated to do, but that's a cost that isn't related to them providing business to an individual or a family or in a homestead. That's more like just getting up on our infrastructure. So
Well, I could talk
about the only
to
way I could think to help them out.
Bob and have him draft some language in the lease agreement and see. Not a dollar amount,
I mean,
but
that would be fairly significant if they had to pay, let's say, 5,000
5,000.
3 times. I mean,
Right.
15,000. That might be an incentive. Now, the other thing I just want to say is if they come on board this year, and then next year they have to start paying, that's 15, maybe even 30,000 in our general coffers. So keep that in mind.
For lease rental.
For
Yeah.
lease
Oh,
rent.
absolutely.
yeah.
And then
Okay.
would that go into the cable fund, or would that go into the
It can
general
go,
fund?
no, it can go into general.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
usually put those in the general.
Yeah, it can go into general, so it could be used for anything.
Okay,
Okay.
and then I'll make Bob's edits to the Lakeside red line, and you're okay with the letter to be sent to the representatives?
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of an ongoing thing that
Yeah.
we've been, just didn't want to drop the ball on and just give you an update on that. They're not in session, but you can send it to them and they'll get it and they'll have it ready for their next session.
And I'll get some more information about the deed grant as well.
Yeah.
That's all I had, unless you guys have any other questions.
All right, so we have a little more time, so we're going to move on to the nuisance ordinance. So,
Riparian. I think we're done
sorry.
with nuisance, hopefully.
thank you.
Can you please be done with that for a while?
Yes, our repairing nuisance. So before we get started on this, I just want to say, especially to Pam and John, I'm not interested in opening up the whole riparian view shed ordinance. I just thought that what Mr. Newman had presented, Newman, right? No? Yes, okay. What he had presented made sense and would alleviate a lot of time and hassle by staff as well as residents as well as builders. So I thought it would be worth looking at that. I'm not interested in looking at the whole entire ordinance and changing it a lot. I just thought if there's some way of adding a subdivision that would address specifically 3 or 4, whatever number that we want. That's kind of where I'm coming from.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, no, Mr. Newman's obviously with us this evening. I think he's got a somewhat updated PowerPoint presentation from what was in your packet and what you saw last time.
Okay.
And to your point, Mayor, that's something that internally from a staff perspective and talking to Mr. Beatty is something that's obviously doable. Depending upon where you want to go with it, you can be as specific as you want, and maybe that's something that they've thought about in terms of trying to write some sort of language that is specific to this development that doesn't necessarily
Disrupt
everything else.
But it could address this development as well as any
Well, right. I
other
mean,
development,
correct. But
lakeshore
the
development.
point being, it's not blowing it up,
Right.
completely. So with that, if you want to allow Mr. Newman an
Sure.
opportunity to present,
Yep.
that'd be fine.
John, you can talk.
The last statement I heard you say was, maybe I didn't hear it right, is making it specific to this development. I don't want to go there.
No. I don't think that's really what I'm looking at. I think it'll be broader or be applied in broader
If we're
terms.
going,
Is
that's
there that
the way
much
I would
lakeshore
go.
left available to build on in developments?
I think that's the thing that
There may not be.
that's left.
I mean, unless
Right.
someone buys a whole bunch of homes on Halstead or
Right.
somewhere, there's not. It seems like all the lakeshore is pretty.
Lake
occupied.
Minnetonka-wise, that's correct. We've had that same discussion where this really is about the biggest piece left on Lake Minnetonka and Minnetrista. What you might want to look ahead, though, as you look at the big map, we do have other lakes, Whale Tail and such. Those are zoned differently. They're the ag district. We're probably talking 25, 30 years plus until you might see that sort of density get out to those areas, if it ever does even. But you're correct. There's very few development opportunities left on Lake Minnetonka.
There are a few large parcels that could be subdivided into potentially 3, maybe.
Maybe.
I'm thinking of Jimmy Jam's as
Yeah.
might be one.
Yep.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for allowing me to come back here. I do like the football nuisance ordinance. I'm going to try not to repeat what we talked about 2 weeks ago. Our thought was, and what I want to do is kind of walk you through a little bit slower this time, point out some of the issues we see. I think, it's certainly your discretion whether or not you want to pursue this. But I think what makes new plats different is that the buyers know where their neighbor's house could be located. It's different than if you go into an infill and tear down a house and all of a sudden you put a new lot in, a new home in, you can move it further forward and the neighbors weren't aware of that, they didn't anticipate it. We really think that's what makes this different. We talked about, why variance is cumbersome. One of the other things we find is that on a high-end home, it can take several months for the home to be designed. And the way we interpret your ordinance, where a home can be placed can be impacted by which order in which the homes are built, which comes first. And somebody could be designing a home with nobody next to them. And by the time they get the home design completed, somebody started a home next door and can throw all the plans out the window. So that's your ordinance. So first we just look at the straight line rule that you have. And so if lots 2 and 3, for example, go first, and they're both at the front yard setback of 75 feet, there's no problem with lot 3. But if no problem with lot 1. But if lot 1 goes first, and say they don't want to go all the way forward to the front setback, they may want a bigger lot, a yard on the lakeside, or they may want to put a pool in, slide the home back. And then lot 3 goes in, by the straight line application of the ordinance. Now all of a sudden, we can't use all the pad on lot 2, and you can see how that's impacted. So we built a pad, the homeowner thinks they're going to be able to build a lot to that point, and now a portion is not being utilized. And the part of the problem then becomes, if the homeowner then decides they've got to slide the lot back, now they've got, in some cases, they may do some additional grading. You may have additional problems with stormwater drainage from lot to lot. It can cause a host of different issues, not the least of which is the inefficiency of building a pad that can't be fully utilized. And as we pointed out, if lot 2 and 3 had gone first, this wouldn't have been an issue. So it kind of strikes me, maybe counterintuitive, that's a race to the building official to determine which order, how close you can go to your front yard setback. Again, if lot 4 goes first, they build a pad, it doesn't impact lot 3, but now all of a sudden let's assume that both 4 and 2 want to have a pool or they want to have a bigger lakeside yard. Now all of a sudden it really impacts lot 3. And part of this is just because of curvilinear nature of shoreline. Paul's really good with these graphics. And so again, not just another example, and we can go on, and those of you who were here 2 years ago, I think when Paul made his presentation with the Cove, saw numerous examples of how that can happen. Now, if we're applying your average portion rule that applies to averages, again, if everybody uses the front yard setback, no problem. But again, if we use that first example, we take the average of 100 feet, somebody wants it 30 feet behind the front yard setback for a pool. Lot 3 is at the front yard setback of 75. Now all of a sudden, the setback for Lot 2 becomes 87, or distance from the lake becomes 87 and a half feet. Same kind of dilemma. Now, I didn't talk about this when I was here 2 weeks ago because of the time limitation, but it's a former city attorney in me that I just can't get rid of. And so as I'm thinking about how would I craft this, one other issue came up that at least I want to make you aware of. In our instance, we really don't have a problem with the neighbors. Steve Anderson's 40 feet from the lake. Olson's are 75 feet. So in all instances, our homes are not going to be any closer to the lake than they are. But what would happen if Olson's was, say, 30 feet behind the side yard setback? Now, if lot 1 goes first, we can go right up that 75-foot setback. Because if we take the straight line, there isn't anybody to the west or to the east. And so then the rule doesn't apply. And what I'm suggesting you might want to think about is if the neighbor of an existing home, if that existing home is within 25 feet of the side yard, the side lot line, that then the first new home in the development should be no closer to this setback than 1/2 of the distance of the adjoining home. So, for example, if Olson's were 30 feet behind the side yard, 30 feet behind the side yard setback, 105 feet from the lake, then our lot 1 to being close to 90 feet from the ordinary high water. It's got to be 10 to 15 feet setback from your normal setback. Now, we know that going in. As long as we know that going in on the front end, we can build a path to that requirement. And you can, everybody knows going in what it is. You don't have to worry about variances, but that's just the one item that came up that I didn't talk about last time. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I appreciate you taking the time to consider it.
Okay. Questions?
Okay, what's the downside of doing this? John. Talk. What's the downside of doing this?
I guess I can't answer that succinctly. After I read this for the 3rd time, maybe it was the 4th time, it does have value. Again, possibility of eliminating variances going through the Planning Commission and through here. There's still going to be, I still envision there will be issues on the timing of when house 1, 3, 2, whatever, how they're built. But as long as there's the verbiage, and that's what I don't understand, is how the verbiage would be put into the ordinance to be very succinct as to, well, one, it's easy to identify a development, but to be succinct as to the possible variables and as to, how it was presented here. I don't know if that's good verbiage, but so that when just in that example, when house number 2 comes in and the lines on 1 and 3 would preclude that individual from being out where they want to be, that it is very clear as to how the rule applies to that development. In a long way, probably a lot of verbiage to say, I can understand that it has value, but I'm not sure how it would be written into the ordinance so that it's clear to everybody. Because everybody knows that's ever read one of these, there's sometimes stuff read between the lines that isn't very clear or can be confusing. And this particular one, at least for me, because I don't live on the lake, I've struggled with this every time it's come up, and I have to re-educate myself, and I understand the logic. It's just defining it out in the verbiage so that it's clear.
So wouldn't there be, let's say, a subsection? So you have the existing ordinance as is, and then there'd be subsection 5, whatever it is, and it would say that subsection applies to subdivisions of 3 or 4 lots or more. And then you would write in that verbiage under that subsection.
That's how it would look formatted, from a format standpoint, correct.
Okay.
Right. But I think to Mr. Shumperlin's point, I mean, even the current ordinance, I mean, whatever language we come up with, I think, the point is there still probably likely could be some gray area. I guess what we would suggest, I mean, obviously they've got a pretty good start and a handle. If, the idea here is to see if there's some willingness, if they were to go ahead and apply for an amendment, have them propose some language to us. They're obviously, very, very capable of doing that and have some ideas and have thought about this, a lot. And it's not their first time. They were involved in the Woodland Cove scenario as well. So I think they have some pretty good ideas. So if the council's willing, the idea here is not to bring something just to, blindside you and say, no way, we don't even want to talk about it. If that's amenable, that would be the idea. And of course, our attorney then would be looking at it as well. We'd run it through the Planning Commission, hold the public hearing, get their input, because this is Chapter 5, so it does require their recommendation, and then bring that to you as council for your final approval of that ordinance amendment.
Okay. The only thing I would want to make sure is that, so in this case, we're talking Olson's and Anderson's, that their views are protected. And it looks like from their example that they would be. Mm-hmm. So I just want to make sure that the existing properties, however the ordinance would be written, that their views are protected.
Mayor and Council, could I ask Mr. Newman a question? What was your thinking when you put together your proposal here of 3 or more? And the reason I'm asking is we've had one, I don't know if touchy's the right word, might be, issue a few years ago with didn't have anything to do with the lakeshore, but it had to do with setbacks. Somebody doing a remodel of a home. And it was with essentially like 3 entities. I would think maybe 4 or more or 5 or more, something that's a little bit more tailored to your specific project that would probably never get applied again to any other development here because we're running out of shoreline. Maybe
Could
it's
be in
David.
Dutch Lake, though.
It could, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying that way it would be more tailored to your circumstances and would take the variability of, again, a 3 neighbor thing happening here.
There wasn't any great logic in picking 3. There's a number that seemed, in my mind, a starting point for a conversation, and I could have said 6 or more if it had been real specific.
Sure, it would be very specific.
But I didn't think that, we've run into this before. I wasn't sure how much more shoreline you had left, but we've run into this before, so we thought let's take a more global look at it.
Yeah.
Maybe 4, because then you got 2 interior lots.
Yep.
That's a good starting point.
I'm just
It was
offering, suggesting that
Yeah.
it might be more tailored to your circumstance and may not be able to be applied in a somebody trying to build an infill.
if you're going to take a tear down and you're going to divide it into 3 lots or 2 lots, and certainly 2 lots are going to have impact on neighbors on both sides.
Right.
That's kind of why we picked 3, because you got at least one in the middle that's not going to be impacted.
It doesn't matter to me, but I just threw that out there.
that makes sense, though.
Yeah.
4.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Does that
John, would you be okay if we did something like that?
Question. Woodland Cove's probably a good example. Have we had a lot of variances asked for in Woodland Cove? I mean, I've been here for a few years. I don't recall a whole lot.
Well, if you recall, they came to us with Woodland Cove, and because that was a PUD, we did an amendment to that setback because of this.
Okay.
This very issue is, quite frankly, somewhat overlooked, if you will, when we went through the whole preliminary plat process and went through the PUD zoning. That, for whatever reason, never was addressed, and so once they started building, they quickly realized that, hey, wait, we got a problem here. So it was a little different there where we were zoned PUD, so we have those flexibilities within doing that.
So that was a blanket
for just for Woodland Cove Lake lots, correct?
Okay.
Yep.
That rings a bell.
Yep. And we and whether you want to say that we got lucky or it's a unique circumstance, because the idea of doing an ordinance amendment came up with Woodland Cove, but because it's the PUD, it's unique, so we could go ahead and do that in that case. Yep.
So if a developer does want to buy around the other lakes eventually, this would, in theory, make it easier for them to say, you buy this lot, this is where your house can go, here's why.
Right.
In theory.
Right. Correct. It could. Yes, it could help. Yes, it could. Yep.
I just wanted to weigh in with John. I think the verbiage is key, and I am interested. And one of the things that I set back on, or kind of did not want to go forward with this, is how many lots will this affect going forward, and how many lots would it may affect that have already maybe gone through this. So it sounds like there's few, not that many.
There's not many left. No, not. I mean, I don't know if you could even on one hand count. And especially if we go four or more, we're down to there's maybe one or two lots on the lake, on Lake Minnetonka right now that are allowed to go that small that you're going to have that effect on. What Palmer Point would have been the other big one. Hermitage Shores and Hermitage Shores was smaller, and they actually reduced the number of lake lots on Hermitage Shores to have bigger houses on them. And Palmer Point, again, it was a different time. The market was much different, and if you all recall, Palmer Point sat empty for quite some time. And the first house on the lake was a spec. So they knew going in, I mean, as he said, the first house sets the tone for everything. Mm-hmm. And so they picked the absolute worst situation all the way on the end, and it goes out to a point. And so, they made sure that wasn't going to be a problem, and they went ahead and set the tone for how it was going to go in that case. So not everything's, the same, and it was, like I said, it was a much different time then in construction and housing and that sort of thing, as opposed to now that things are selling and people are designing on their own, and you're not seeing spec houses go on Lake Minnetonka. So.
Okay. And the only other thing, I had mentioned how much time we have spent on this one issue, and money, lawyers, and so forth. I don't know if we don't have a crystal ball. However, it would have been nice had somebody, if they would have known that this was a possibility, to come to us in the process that this ordinance was being discussed. That was just something that it would have been nice had it been thought about back then, but you probably did not know, as I'm assuming.
We didn't know about it until we're in the second phase or third phase of Woodland Cove.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So my only other question, real quick, timing-wise, so it would have to go to the Planning Commission. You kind of have our thoughts, I think 4 or more. Make sure that the adjacent properties on either side aren't affected. Make it simple. Your one example sounded a little more complicated, but make it simple so that it's very easy to understand. And then, so it'll go to the Planning Commission in September?
Likely, yeah, given the timing where we are now, because we've passed our deadline for this month's public hearing. So, yeah, the soonest
would be September.
Planning Commission,
right.
to
and then
bring it to you that next meeting.
In October. So,
yep.
Does that work for you?
Works. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for the input.
Yes.
Thank you.
With that, the only other comment I would say is expenses. Are they picking up tabs for?
Well, as I said,
expenses?
the logical would be to apply for an ordinance amendment.
Okay.
And like I said, provide proposed language that we can work off of. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Newman. Oh, with that, we can be concluded and take a short break, I think. Yeah.
Personal comment.
Yes.
Tonight you're going to see, I think, Woodland Cove 4th and 5th.
Right.
Carlson's now sold out of all the residential property. The other thing they've left is what's on the west side of Kings Point Road. And I look back at my calendar, Mayor, we started this 14 years ago.
I know.
And at one point you got sick of looking at Peter and Paul and myself. And Mike was there, and David was there, and it's been a long haul. So
It has been.
Can't help but reflect on that tonight, as I said, it was last time. Thank you.
It's been a long haul, thank you. But I think it's coming around in a very nice development. And we have one of our council members that lives there, so she can attest to that. And those houses on the point, oh my gosh. Yes, beautiful, beautiful. So we're glad that they're here paying taxes. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so Kathleen made that and seconded that. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes. We are adjourned for about 20 minutes or so.